I had been yearning for this meeting for so long. Every single day, every single moment, I had spent waiting for it. After 4 years of intense and stormy love, the moment of union had finally arrived. Throughout these past 4 years, I had constantly thought of Aslam and envisioned a beautiful life with him in my imagination. But every time, for some reason or another, the wedding date kept getting postponed, and I was left with a heavy heart. Aslam was going through the same ordeal. He was overwhelmed with emotions, but he simply couldn't get leave from work. It was for my wishes that he had gone abroad because I wanted a good life. And now getting leave to return home had become a major challenge. Over the past 4 years, our wedding date was set 3 times, but each time it had to be canceled at the last moment because Aslam couldn't get leave. My mother would often say that he didn't want to marry me, that he had found some foreign woman abroad and was just making excuses. My father even considered breaking off the engagement multiple times, but I loved Aslam deeply. I would always get angry and argue with my parents because I was sure that Aslam loved me dearly and had gone abroad only for my sake. Aslam had never wanted to go abroad, but I had set a condition that I wouldn't marry him until he secured a good job abroad and built a future for us. He already had a decent job here, but at my insistence, he left for foreign lands after getting engaged to me. However, when he couldn't return, everyone turned against him. But I never lost hope. I knew he would come back, and this time, he had finally given me the good news of his return. Preparations for the wedding began at home, but my father kept warning me, "Be careful, my dear. If he doesn't make it at the last minute, our reputation will be ruined." Aslam had booked his flight just 2 days before the wedding. If he missed it or any problem arose, our honor would be at stake. My father's words did make me anxious, but I had personally spoken to Aslam, and he assured me that this time he would come on time. I had made all the preparations, buying everything I liked for the wedding. Then, 2 days before the wedding, Aslam finally returned. I was overwhelmed with happiness. My heart's desire had been fulfilled. I was finally married and left with Aslam, holding his hand as I reached his home. My in-laws welcomed me with open arms, leaving no stone unturned in making me feel at home. There were only a few people in his house, just a younger brother-in-law and a sick mother-in-law. Aslam seated me on the bed and left to meet his friends. Meanwhile, my young brother-in-law, who was 13 years old, came to me. He hugged me tightly as soon as he arrived. I felt a little strange because, despite being young, he was quite tall and broad. He then said, "Bobby, I want a bride exactly like you. You are so beautiful." Suddenly, he rushed to the door, locked it, and came back to me. My heart started pounding. I said, "Afzal, what are you doing?" He laughed loudly and said, "I'm teasing Aslam Bhai. It will be so much fun. He will knock on the door all night and I won't open it. I'll keep him standing outside." There was a mischief in his tone and I couldn't help but laugh. I said, "This is not right. Open the door." He replied, "I won't open it. Why did he have to go to his friends? Now that he's gone, let him return in the morning." He laid his head in my lap himself. I was feeling both a bit worried and amused. His childishness was clearly evident to me. He said, "Tonight I will sleep next to you, and Aslam Bhai can sleep with mother. After all, he made us wait for so long. He deserves some punishment." Afzal's words made perfect sense to me. Indeed, I had been waiting for Aslam impatiently for 4 years, and every time he had an excuse of not getting leave. I said to Afzal, "All right, I'm with you. Let's trouble him together." He quickly shook hands with me and winked. He was happy to have me on his side, and I also wanted to tease Aslam a little. After some time, there was a knock on the room door, and Aslam's voice came from outside. "Open the door. What is this? Why have you locked the door?" Aslam had no idea that Afzal was inside the room with me. Before I could say anything, Afzal spoke up. "No, Bhai, you can't come in tonight. You made Bobby wait for so many years. Tonight, it's your turn to wait." Hearing Afzal's voice, Aslam's tone turned angry. "What are you doing in my room? Open the door or I'll break it down." I could clearly sense the anger in Aslam's voice, and suddenly I was terrified. I hadn't expected him to get this furious. Panicking, I told Afzal, "Open the door," but he refused. No, let's trouble him for a little while longer, he said mischievously. I had a strange feeling that trouble was about to come my way. I told Afzal, look, don't make Aslam angry. Things might get serious. Afzal laughed and said, he loves you so much. How can he get angry with you? Besides, it's your wedding night. All your mistakes will be forgiven. Trust me, once he sees you, he'll forget everything. He then called out loudly, we are not opening the door. Tonight, Bobby and I will sleep together, and you can go sleep with Mother. Upon hearing this, Aslam went mad with rage and started banging on the door. I was terrified. I could feel the tension he was going through. Without wasting another moment, I quickly got up and unlocked the door. Aslam didn't even look at me as he stormed into the room, grabbed Afzal by the arm, and dragged him out. Before I could do anything, Aslam locked me inside the room. I called out to him, trying to save Afzal, but I was trapped. Fear gripped me as I sat inside, listening to their shouting and yelling from outside. I couldn't do anything. First, because Aslam had locked the door from the outside, and second, because I was too scared. I had never seen Aslam behave like this before. We had been together for many years, but he had never raised his voice at me. But because of my foolish prank, he had lost his temper completely, and his younger brother had to suffer for it. On my wedding night, I had entered this house with so many dreams, but my mistake had shattered everything. I regretted supporting Afzal in his mischief. Perhaps if I hadn't, Aslam wouldn't have been so furious. I was angry at myself. After a long while, when Aslam finally entered the room, he removed the turban from his head and threw it onto the sofa without even glancing at me. He went straight into the bathroom. I had never expected such behavior from Aslam. Tears welled up in my eyes. After some time, when he came out of the bathroom, I got up and approached him. Holding his arm, I said, Aslam, we were just joking. There was no need to be this angry. Aslam shot me a sharp look, grabbed my hand and threw me onto the bed. He said, you think this was a joke? You allowed my brother into our room, and now you're telling me it was just for fun? Do you have any sense of shame or modesty? Aslam's words hit me like a dagger. He continued, Afzal is not a child. He's a 13-year-old boy, practically a young man. You should have been more mindful of this. Hearing this, I was furious. I couldn't believe he would say such a thing about me. I angrily replied, do I seem so immoral to you? Do you really think I would replace you with your 13-year-old brother? It was just a silly prank. Aslam retorted, there's a way to do things. I don't ever want to see you alone with Afzal again, or else no one will see a worse side of me than me. With that, he turned away and lay on the bed, facing the other side. There was no wedding gift, no affectionate words, and not even a single loving glance between us. Instead, I cried the entire night, and Aslam didn't even turn to look at me. He completely ignored me, which only made me angrier. Did he doubt my character, or was he doubting his own brothers? Was such a harsh punishment really necessary for such a small mistake? After all, we had been in love for years. I had spent every single day waiting for him, and now, on the very first night of our marriage, he had turned away from me completely. I cried through the night, and in the morning, Aslam still didn't speak to me. When I got ready and stepped out of the room, I saw my sick mother-in-law sitting in the living room. As soon as she saw me, she turned her face away, which made me even more anxious. I went up to her and said, Amma, I didn't do anything wrong. Afzal and I were just being playful. She looked at me with anger and replied, because of your so-called playfulness, you've created a rift between two brothers. I tried to explain, but it was Afzal's idea. I just went along with it. She scoffed. Afzal is just a child, but you are supposed to be a wise woman. You were the bride sitting on the wedding bed, and you let your brother-in-law sit beside you? This was bound to happen. No man would tolerate his wife being with another man, even if it's his own brother. Her words were harsh and judgmental. She added, I told Aslam not to marry a girl who had been involved with him from such a young age. God knows how many other men you've been involved with. And now you're trying to trap my younger son too. Stay away from Afzal or things will get worse. My mother-in-law had blown the whole situation out of proportion and openly expressed her dislike for me. She was never happy with this marriage in the first place. Aslam and I had been neighbors for years, and we had loved each other deeply. It was for my sake that Aslam went abroad, something his mother could never accept. She always wanted him to stay close to her, but I had insisted he go overseas, build a better future, and secure our life. This had always been a thorn in her heart. She believed I had taken her son away from her. A little while later, Afzal came to the dining table, his head lowered. He didn't even look up at me. I felt a wave of sympathy for him. How could he have known that his innocent prank would escalate into such a serious matter? After breakfast, he came to the kitchen to apologize. His eyes were filled with tears, and his head was bowed in shame. I forgave him immediately, saying, "It's not your fault, Afzal. Aslam is just overreacting. Don't worry, everything will be fine." The next 15 days that followed, Aslam treated me a little better, and the incident from our wedding night was never brought up again. I had wanted to express my grievances and complaints to Aslam, but he had made it clear in no uncertain terms that he did not want to discuss it any further. 15 days later, Aslam had to return abroad, leaving only me, my ailing mother-in-law, and Afzal at home. Before leaving, Aslam sternly reminded me to take care of my dignity and to maintain a distance from Afzal. His words at the airport deeply hurt me. I could not understand why he repeatedly asked me to stay away from Afzal. In my eyes, there was nothing wrong with him. He was just a child, innocent and harmless. Over the past 15 days, he had not caused me any trouble, and I could see his innocence clearly. But I chose to remain silent and said nothing to my husband as he left for abroad. Just a month after Aslam's departure, my mother-in-law's health suddenly deteriorated and she passed away. Aslam could not make it back in time, and it was left to Afzal and me to handle the funeral arrangements. Aslam could only watch his mother's funeral over a video call, shedding tears from afar. After my mother-in-law's passing, it was just Afzal and me left in the house. Afzal was devastated. He was already without a father. Aslam was away, and now his mother was gone too. I was the only support he had left. On the first night after her passing, he broke down crying uncontrollably, unsure of how he would cope. He was used to sleeping in his mother's room, and the thought of sleeping alone overwhelmed him. Seeing his sorrow, my heart softened, and I told him, "Afzal, you are not alone. I am here with you. Come and sleep in my room." I thought I would let him sleep with me for a night or two, and once his heart felt lighter, he would return to his own room. But that didn't happen. For the first 2 or 3 nights, he stayed awake, talking about his mother and sharing stories from his childhood. What surprised me was that he never mentioned Aslam. Not once in all his conversations did he bring up his elder brother. Sometimes I felt like he was still holding a grudge against Aslam. Since that night of our wedding, I had never seen him talk to Aslam. He did not go to see him off at the airport, nor did he speak to him after their mother's passing. Aslam, too, never asked to talk to Afzal. Instead, he would only ask me about his well-being. Gradually, Afzal's grief began to fade, but he never returned to his own room. He continued sleeping in my bed. I tried several times, subtly suggesting that he should go back to his room, but he ignored my words. His presence provided me with a sense of comfort too, as I often felt lonely and afraid in the empty house. So, I stopped insisting. 1 month passed in this way. Then one night, I woke up to an unusual sound. To my shock, I realized it was coming from the bathroom. I quietly got out of bed and tiptoed toward the bathroom door. What I heard inside made my blood run cold. Afzal was not a child anymore. He had grown up, and I had failed to realize it. Trembling, I peeked through the keyhole, and what I saw drained the life out of me. I quickly rushed back to my bed, shut my eyes tightly, and lay still, pretending to be asleep. Never in my wildest dreams had I thought that the boy I considered a child. He had grown into a young man, and I was only now realizing how dangerous it could be for me to share a room with him. I didn't know what to do or how to handle the situation. I spent the entire night in restlessness and anxiety. A little while later, Afzal returned to his place beside me, his breathing heavy. I had come to understand his intentions and his actions all too well. The next morning, without wasting any time, I called Aslam and asked him to come back home. Aslam replied, "You know that's not possible. It hasn't even been 2 months since I came here, And now you're asking me to return? I pleaded with him, leave your job and come back here. Work here. I need you. Hearing my words, Aslam was shocked. He said, you were the one who wanted this life abroad, a luxurious lifestyle. I came here because of you. Why are you asking me to come back now? I insisted, no matter what, you have to come back now. Afzal and I both need you. Aslam hesitated for a moment upon hearing Afzal's name and asked, is everything okay? Has Afzal done something? I told him, you'll find out when you come back. Just leave your job and return home. I was desperate. Aslam asked for some time to think, and 15 days later, he left everything and came back. I hadn't told Afzal about his return, so when he saw Aslam at home, he was utterly shocked. I ran to Aslam and hugged him, crying my heart out. He was also grieving their mother's death and wept for a while before asking, now tell me what's going on. Afzal was out of the house at the time, so I took my time and told Aslam everything. He was furious after hearing it and said, I had warned you not to let Afzal stay in your room, but you didn't listen to me. You should be grateful nothing bad happened to you. I know my brother well. I know how far he can go. That's why I told you to stay away from him. But you didn't understand. I started crying and said, I only saw him as someone who needed support. I didn't know he had gone down such a wrong path. Now I feel scared to even live in the same house with him. Aslam sighed and said, I realized the night of our wedding that he was on the wrong path, and that's why I was angry. But I never imagined he would go this far. Aslam was deeply worried. A while later, Afzal returned home, and Aslam sat him down for a conversation. At first, Afzal hesitated, but eventually he broke down crying and admitted everything. Yes, bye, he confessed. I have started using drugs. My school friends got me into it. I can't find peace without it. And when I don't have money, I feel like I'm going crazy. Aslam gently but firmly spoke to him. We will get you help. You have to leave this habit. Afzal sobbed and apologized to his brother. Aslam forgave him and made up his mind to put him on the right path. I finally felt relieved knowing that Aslam was here to guide Afzal away from his bad habits. He immediately arranged for Afzal's treatment and cut off his contact with the bad company he was keeping. That night, when I had woken up to the strange noises from the bathroom and approached the door, I had overheard Afzal arguing with someone over the phone. I don't have money, he was saying, but just give me the drugs for now. As soon as Bahai sends money, I'll find a way to get it from Bobby or steal it if I have to. Hearing those words had shaken me to my core, and I knew I could no longer handle the situation alone. I stay in their room so I can easily access their belongings and steal their money. Anyway, Bobby trusts me, so taking money from her isn't difficult. Just get me the drugs, Afzal had said over the phone that night. That was the moment I realized how far Afzal had strayed onto the wrong path, and I knew I needed Aslam to bring him back to the right track. Living without Aslam was becoming difficult for me as well. Gradually, I understood that having a husband by my side was far more important than money. That's why I insisted on bringing him back. Aslam took up the same job he had before leaving for abroad, and things started to fall into place. His previous job here was already decent, and our financial situation remained stable, so there was no major difficulty. Slowly, Afzal began to improve. His treatment started, and he cut ties with his bad company. I thanked Allah for making everything right. Instead of judging Afzal for his mistakes, I chose to help him get rid of his addiction. That's why he was able to turn away from his bad habits. Had I informed Aslam in the wrong way, his reaction might have been different. He might have developed hatred for Afzal and thrown him out of our lives. We need to keep a close eye on our children and guide them towards the right path, sometimes with love and sometimes with firmness. Through all of this, I also realized that my true happiness lies with Aslam. Without him, I was never truly happy. When Aslam returned from abroad, my life became complete, and soon our home was filled with joy as I was blessed with a child. Happiness surrounded us, and our family finally felt whole again.